Hi, my name is Keith McGee, and I'm a war gamer. A lot of times I find that when I take my young son with me, my 12-year-old boy Eric, down to the local hobby store, there's too many guys on the table, there's no place for us to play. Or we get on the table, and because he's 12 years old, he wants to play with every piece he's got, and the games tend to drag out, which the other players don't really appreciate. So I wanted to be able to build something that Eric and I could use here at the house, or my buddies when they come over for a late night game, and that we could build a terrain table that is versatile and durable and easy to store. So what I'm going to do today is show you a $50 project that creates a terrained side and a smooth side board, and because it's modular, allows me to move the terrain slats around to create a different effect. It's a real simple project, a lot of fun, something you can do yourself, and everything you see here was purchased at a do-it-yourself home store. Okay, as you can see, the very first thing that we've purchased is a couple of real simple, inexpensive items from do-it-yourself store. On the right-hand side, the pink foam board you see there was $12 for a sheet, which I had cut into 2-foot sections. And on the left, you can see I've got some MDF board, which again is around $7 a sheet for a 2x4. These are 1/4 inch thickness, which is heavy enough to make it lay down flat and to keep it from warping. The great thing about MDF board is that it doesn't have much warpage, and as long as you lay it flat, it's fairly low maintenance. While you're dealing with the fiber board, one of the things you'll recognize pretty quickly is there's this plastic coating which is put on top of it, meant to make it water repellent if you're using it for its intended purpose, which is insulation. And in order to make this thing take paint, one of the first things you've got to do is just peel this off, and again, do it from both sides. You usually have one side that has some marking on it. We'll use that as the underside so it doesn't show through our paint. The other side is usually mar-free, but both sides will have this little impervious waterproof stripping. Just peel it right off and get it off of both sides, throw it away, and you're ready to go to the next step. A couple of quick notes about painting. You'll notice that I'm using a real thin foam-based roller brush and a very small tray that came with it. The entire thing is about the size of my hand, as you can see. When I'm painting, one of the things I like to do is, rather than start at one edge and just work my way to the other end, which tends to leave some striping, I like to paint in a fairly random pattern, starting from the middle towards the outer edges, and this helps me eliminate the potential for any kinds of striped patterns. I want it to look more natural. We are going to come back and touch this up with a sponge. I'll show you that technique in a few minutes. But for now, just be aware that while you're painting this thing, be aware it's going to take 2 coats. But while you're doing your actual painting, start from the center and work your way towards the edges in kind of a sun fan shape. Here you can see I've already painted up the very first panel of the foam core board. Again, because I've taken off that plastic wrapper, it's got a little bit of a texture to it, and using a roller brush paint roller, I was able to apply the water-based paint to the unit. And again, be sure and get all the edges done on all the sides. At this point in time, we haven't cut anything out to size or shape. We want to make this to where we can intertwine or mix and match the trenches and features that we've got. So for now, we don't know where the cuts actually go. So go ahead and paint all your edges, and once we glue this thing and lay it out on the actual MDF board, we'll come back then and by hand touch up all the exposed edges. One of the most important things we have to do when we're lining up a trench system is to make sure that everything will swap around smoothly. The best way to do that is draw it up to scale on your computer, or get out the old measuring stick, your ruler, and you'll see that there's areas that I've marked off with red boxes. And no matter what the direction or the flow of the actual trench, it's got to begin and end at one of those red boxes. By doing that, we can be sure that no matter how we line the panels up, they'll always have a nice connecting point from one edge to the other. Okay, here you can see I've taped off and measured out the rough rudiments of how I'm going to put together 2 of the particular boards. I've actually got all 3 of them done, and I'll show you in a second. The key thing is to notice that the edges are contiguous no matter what the shape of the trench is, and as I move the different component pieces around, you'll see they always match up. Now obviously this is going to be a 3-board set. I'm going to go ahead and lay this down on the ground real quick and you can see how all 3 of them will match up. Put this on the concrete here. My table's not quite large enough to actually demonstrate the entire thing. And I'll show you how when you move the pieces around you can create different configurations of board as long as you have a simultaneous, there we go, a simultaneous entry and exit point on each of the boards. Now let's take this, for example, this outside piece and slide it in. And you'll see we've got a centerfold here now that is more or less like a no man's land where you could bring heavy tanks and things like that through. So I think that now you get the idea. There you go. You can see that no matter how I lay this thing out, put one edge to the other, and there'll always be a contiguous point where it can pick up the trench. And all we have to do now is cut that out. Okay, so I've cut out the actual outlines that we'd drawn earlier. I marked them off with a pencil, which kind of creates an indentation. Pulled up the tape, which makes it pretty easy to outline your positioning. And then using a real fine-tooth saw, keyhole saw, I went through and cut out the individual pieces. Now this is, as you can see, got a lot of detail to it, and there's some weak points. For example, right here in the very back by the bunker, there's only a few inches that connect this. If it happens to break, don't sweat it, don't worry about it, you can always just glue it back together. Now, talking about the glue, a couple of things to be aware of. One is that when you put the glue on, make sure you use a white glue. Put it on rather liberally. Matter of fact, you'll see that I've got several places where the glue is kind of seeping out the bottom, and that's okay. No real problem with that. That's going to dry clear, and we're going to paint over it anyhow. But we really get our resiliency for the foam board adhesion to the MDF based on that glue. Now, once you actually begin to mount the foam board with the glue onto the actual MDF board, pay real close attention to your edges. Let me move over here where I've got a little bit better light and you'll see what I'm talking about. The glue obviously creates a cushion, and as you're placing this thing on the MDF board, you've got to make sure that you do a real attentive job of making sure that the edges of the foam board line up very tightly with the edges of the MDF board. Once that's done, set the piece aside on a flat surface and you are ready to go on to complete the rest of the boards.